Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 6th Congressional District Candidate Forum, sponsored by the Danvers Democratic Town Committee. My name is Lou Bernazani. I am co-chair of the committee, and I will serve as the moderator this evening. We're delighted to have all you people here. This is a great turnout. Thank you so much. Before we start, could you please take a moment and silence any devices that make noise? Restroom is over here to my right. Exits are where you entered and over here to my left. So tonight we're here to hear from our 6 candidates seeking nomination for the U.S. Congress. The person chosen by voters will help shape not only the future of our district, but also the direction of our country during a most consequential time. Over the past few months, our committee has had the opportunity to meet these candidates and learn more about their campaigns. What we've learned is that each one, facing the daunting challenge ahead of us, steps up and says, "Send me." We should be proud of each one of these candidates, but we can only elect one. So that's why we're here tonight. We're grateful to all you guys showing up tonight and joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we get started, and I forget, I'd like to thank the folks that made tonight's event possible, our Danvers Dems volunteers, our outreach coordinator, Liz Brennan, our forum committee coordinator, Jillian Earp Duran, and our Blue Crew team, Liz Bernazani, Lucy Desmond, Barbara Devereaux, Charlotte Jordan, and Deborah Lemieux.
Nice.
Could you guys just stand? I really appreciate them because I done virtually nothing. We're also grateful for the Danvers Historical Society for allowing us to use this historic facility, and Lauren Silly, has been assisting us through this process. Up in the top. A special thank you to the Danvers Cable Access Television team. Greg Dolan over here to my left. They'll be recording tonight's event. I'd also like to recognize some of our elected officials that are here. State Senator Joan Lovely. State Representative Sally Currens. And our Danvers Select Board member Dee Joko. We thank all you guys for joining us tonight. All right, so tonight is a forum, it's not a debate. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. It'll be followed by a series of questions asked by the Danvers Dems. And then following that, at closing, we'll ask each candidate to give a 2-minute closing statement. Liz seated in the front row will be our timekeeper. It's my daughter, be nice. I would say. Liz will let you know when there's 1 minute remaining, 30 seconds remaining when you're out of time. So we ask all the candidates, please respect the time limits so that everyone has equal opportunity tonight. to make the best use of our time, we ask that everybody hold their applause, except for 2 designated points. The first opportunity is right now. Please help me welcome. Speaking what I will bear, I will call upon each candidate. It's designed to be balanced, everyone's pressed past in the middle, so you can see how well I can do that. So we have a chosen random draw for who would start with the opening statement. And so we begin the opening statement with John Beckman.
Thank you, Lou, for hosting tonight. We need to expand educational opportunities, starts with universal pre-K, expanding vocational programs. Scale back the damage done to the big, beautiful bill. I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Bethany?
Thank you. My name is Bethany Andrews-Beck. I'm a software engineer from Middleton, and AI ought to work for all of us. I have been involved in Middleton local politics for a while, and we had a real MAGA problem. And we set out to organize, and we were able to drive them back. We were able to get good people who care about schools, who care about our libraries, who understand you need money to fill potholes, into our local government by getting together, turning out, knocking on doors through democracy. And then Trump got reelected, and there are some problems we cannot fix at town meeting. So I stepped up to run. I know that AI is going to affect every part of our lives, but instead of doing their job and regulating these new technologies, Congress has been listening to CEOs. They've been throwing billions of dollars at data centers that drive our energy prices up, that pollute, that make life worse, that are sucking the water out of our lakes and rivers. And I know that we can have this work for us. Other countries are regulating AI. But here in America, we need people in Washington who understand these new technologies, who weren't elected before the internet was invented. And to get the better government we deserve, we need a different kind of politics. And we saw last night in New York that it is possible, that when people turn out, people and enthusiasm and real solutions and getting things done is the thing that can beat money. And so I want to take my 20 years of experience building software that works for ordinary people and build a government that works for all of us.
Thanks, Bethany. Tron?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much to Denver STEMs for organizing, for all of you for being here. I'm running for Congress because our government is in crisis and it's failing us right now. We need a progressive champion right now who has the lived experience and the professional experience and the lived experience of fighting and actually winning. These fights are very personal to me. I've lived the American dream. For those of you who are familiar, I came to the US when I was 5 years old as a political refugee from Vietnam with $100. We lived in public housing. I know what it's like to see my parents struggle. I was the first in my family to go to college. But my vision for this district is so much bigger than my personal story. I believe that too many people feel like government isn't working for them. And they work hard, they play by the rules, but they still struggle to get ahead because that American dream is so, so far away. At the same time, they see well-connected people getting access, getting resources, making influences, and getting these opportunities that are so far away for them. And I want to change that. I've spent my entire career in public service to be there for the people, to uplift the people, and give them fair shot at success. I'm the only legislator in this race. Since beating a MAGA Republican in 2018, I've continued to deliver for the people, lowering costs, making sure that we are bringing back money to the district, and making sure that we're there for our constituents. And our district right now needs a new voice, a fresh perspective, and someone who's going to go in there to not only who won't be a part of the DC establishment, but will work to actually fix it. And that's what I'm here. I want more people at the table. I want to uplift those who've been left out so that they feel like government can work for them again. And if you share in that vision, I hope you consider voting for me and supporting me in this race. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tron. Jamie?
Thank you so much, Lou. My name's Jamie Zalloway Belcedo, and I'm running to be our next Congresswoman because the people in Washington have forgotten whom they're supposed to represent. I'm a former town moderator, a former state representative for the 4th Essex District, and the only Arab American woman ever elected to the legislature in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm a working mother of 2 and a proud product of this district here. I believe that government can take good care of people, and that became very obvious to me after the birth of my first daughter. I experienced debilitating mental health complications after I had my first daughter, and I could not find the support that I needed. I almost lost my life, and when I started to get better, I got to work, and I founded the Maternal Mental Health Leadership Alliance in Washington, D.C., where I've been working with Congress, four administrations and 5 congressional sessions to bring almost $150 million in services for families, both civilian and military, helping over 100,000 families across this country. I'm not even in Congress yet, but I'm already delivering results for this nation. I'm the product of a proud union and military family, a first-generation Salem Stater. I've lost my job, I've lost my health care, I've almost lost my home. I know what it is like to struggle, what it takes to fight back. I flipped a seat that hadn't been held by a Dem since 1858. I have been openly supporting the state audit, and I have been consistently calling out the US-funded genocide in Gaza. We need to codify Roe. We need Voters' Rights Act. We need to get money out of politics. We don't need another Washington insider. You need someone with a strong backbone and sharp elbows that gets stuff done. I'm going to be here for the district because I love this place. I'm raising my family like I was raised here. My name's Jamie Belcedo. I ask for your support, and I thank you for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Dan?
Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. My name is Dan Coe, and I think in this time, more than any in American history, we need a fighter with experience at all levels of government to take on this president at every single turn and to actually deliver in lowering prices for people. I have 2 German, Irish, Italian, Lebanese, Korean American kids, and I worry every day about what this president is taking away from them. And as a descendant of Korean and Lebanese immigrants, and as a person who grew up in Andover, I've dedicated my life to using government to serve people better. In the Biden White House, we took on special interests to lower prices. As Chief of Staff to Mayor Walsh in Boston, we brought unions to the table because when unions do well, so do businesses. And as an Andover Town Selectman, we made sure to put the town on a healthy financial path for generations to come. It's why President Biden, Vice President Harris, Secretary Pete Buttigieg, the Massachusetts AFL-CIO, and over 100 local elected officials and unions have endorsed our campaign. So if you believe what I believe, that despite so many reasons to feel down, it is now time to double down on the fight for our democracy. If you believe what I believe, that despite so many reasons to lose hope, it is now time for all of us to fight for that hope that our ancestors fought so hard for us to be here for, and for the next generation, then I ask for you to join our campaign and join our fight. Let's go. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Mariah?
No.
My mic was hot. How about now? Oh, that sounds better. Hi, everybody. I am Mariah Lancaster. I am a veterinarian. I am a public servant, and I am a proud Massachusetts native. I grew up here in Northeast Mass. I graduated from UMass Amherst and then from Tufts Veterinary School, all the while relying on federal student loans, which in 10 years I have never missed a payment, and they just keep growing. I rent my apartment in Salem with my fiance because even at 36 years old, being able to afford a house is a pipe dream. And I have seen firsthand as a clinician and as a member of the disability community how broken our healthcare system truly is. Not just for our pets, but also for us. I went into policy to combat these corrupt systems at a higher level, and I did that effectively. I worked in the State Department for 2 years, combating corruption around the globe, and then I went into the U.S. House of Representatives, where I worked as a science policy advisor and a legislative staffer for 2 Democratic congresswomen on Capitol Hill. But what I also learned there is that in this moment of profound crisis, Congress is fundamentally failing us. And it is up to us, all the people in this room, right now, as Democrats and as Americans, to take action, to reset the future of this party. The reality is that only 2% of people in Congress are actually from working class backgrounds. Out of 535 members, that is 12 people. So to actually make life better for working people, we have to actually send working people to Congress. And that's why I'm running. To be a different kind of Democrat, to usher in true progressive change, and to reshape the future of the party. In this race, I am focusing on transforming our healthcare system, on ushering in a clean energy revolution, on strengthening education for kids across America. I'm very proud to have the Massachusetts Teachers Association endorsement and the National Education Association's endorsement. Sorry, it's a mouthful. Oh boy. And fundamentally rooting out corruption. I'm seeing the stop, but I will also say strengthening the absolute core that we need to of our nation's integrity and restoring the fabric of our democracy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mariah. And thank you, everybody.
Sorry that we're sharing.
We'll now begin the question portion. Am I on? All right. So we'll now enter the question portion of tonight's forum. Jillian will pass the microphone to different dearest Dems to ask a question. And each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the question, and the order will be whatever, the order will be random. I'm ready, Joe.
Hello, welcome back to Danvers, all you candidates. We're happy to have you here. My name is Tom Marr. I'm the Vice Chair of the Danvers Democratic Town Committee, and I was asked to read the first question. The polls prove that voters are disillusioned by both major political parties, to say the least. How would you show the voters that the Democratic Party is a party for social and economic equality, civil rights, human rights, and a strong government safety net for all, and we are not just the anti-Trump party, as many voters believe? Thank you.
Bethany, before
Oh, I start. Thank you. Not just voters, I'm disillusioned with the way things have been going. I know that we can do better than we've done, but we can't just even be the party of these good ideas. We have to be the party of doing things about them. We can't just say we're for transparency and then not vote for any bill that comes up that would increase transparency. We can't say we're for green energy and then throw billions of dollars at the fossil fuel industry. We have to consider solutions that can solve these problems. And that's why I call myself a socialist, because there are places capitalism has failed. When someone dies because they are too poor to get health care, when monopolies mean that companies can charge us as much as they want, when companies are able to pollute our rivers and drive our electricity prices up for their private profits and then expect a government bailout when the inevitable crash comes, capitalism has failed. And the solutions to those problems are socialist. Do not care where an idea comes from as long as it goes after the real problem. And the solution to that is democracy. It has to come from a movement of people, not a movement of elite showing up every 2 years and begging us for our vote. I will stay involved in this district, like I've been involved in this district. I am building a progressive movement across the North Shore that can create lasting change and improve our lives. And by doing this, we can offer people something more than just anti-Trump. We can offer something that does reestablish consequences in this country and builds a better life for all of us.
Thank you, Bethany. Dan?
I think it's important, once again, to recognize the stakes here. We have a president every single day who is trampling our Constitution, destroying our democracy, and it gets worse every day. People forget about what he did the day before. We cannot let this man off the hook, and Democrats in D.C. look feckless and helpless. We need someone who will go down there when we win back the House, not if, and subpoena every single person who has bent the knee to this president, get to the bottom of the corruption, and make sure it never happens again. My job in the White House as Deputy Cabinet Secretary was to work with cabinets and responsible heads of agencies to deliver for people. Secondly, we talk about affordability, but we got to define what affordability means. And so I'm calling it the no more agenda. If you have kids, you are paying no more than $10 a day for your child care. If you buy a house, you deserve $25,000 in down payment assistance. And if you're renting, no more than 30% of your income should go to your rent. For health care, no more getting bankrupt because you get sick. We need Medicare for all. If you have utility bills, which we all do, no more than 6% of your income should be going to utility bills. And most importantly, for our next generation, no more child poverty. Donald Trump eliminated the tax credit for that. It caused child poverty to skyrocket. We need to reinstate it so that we take care of our next generation. How do you pay for all that? Very, very simple. Repeal the tax cut on the first trillionaire the United States has ever seen. And if you reverse Trump's tax cuts, you will have $2 trillion to pay for this agenda with $800 million left over. That's bold democratic progress. We need to be fighting for it, and I will be fighting for it on day one. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Jamie?
I want to ask if I may have the question repeated, please. Thank you. Thank you.
The polls prove that voters are disillusioned by both major political parties. How would you show the voter that we, the Democratic Party, are the party for social and economic equality, civil rights, human rights, and a strong government safety net for all, and not just the anti-Trump party, as many voters believe?
Yeah, so you're going to vote me in the office because I'm a working mother of two who's almost lost their house, has had no health insurance, needed to use Medicare, is currently paying continued property taxes on my house to fund our education system, is still paying off my husband's law school loans, put myself through Salem State, is taking care of my mother in senior housing, and has a father who's a vet. I mean, I'm working class. Like, that's it. There's no flies on me. You're not going to get anything different than what you have up here. And the Democratic Party, you know, my favorite thing was to continue to get, just for a cup of coffee, will you give me $5 more? Those texts, I need the $5. My family needs the $5. For us to have been politicizing that the governor of Pennsylvania was having a fabulous time in Nantucket, for $10,000 a plate, you could go support him, while I was trying to figure out how I was going to pay for my air conditioning over the summer a couple of years ago. That's a problem. But if we keep electing the same people that are bankrolling their political career, then you're not going to get results. Don't ask me for your vote if you're not going to take care of the working class. Don't pretend to represent unions and workers and people who are scrapping by when you don't even know what it's like if you're not going to be able to pay your bills. That's the issue here. It's become the haves and the have-nots. You want someone like me who's going to go down there, who's going to represent the people, who's with the people, listening to what they need. What do you need? Oh, you even need simple things like cable access into senior centers. They're paying $75 just to watch their news shows. We can't come up with a better plan. My father can't go to the VA and get all of his services done because we don't care about military. Start walking the walk, start talking the talk, and we're going to get everyone back to the Democratic Party.
Thank you, Jamie. John?
So yeah, I think obviously a lot of us are in this race because we are outraged with what's going on with the Trump administration, and we got to fight to protect our democracy day in and day out. And we need to take real action and really got to fight back against the corruption. But equally, and probably more importantly, we got to fight for the working families here in the district and here in the country. What's happened is we've lost the middle class. There's so much inequality. People are making tough decisions, and this administration is making it worse. Gas prices are going up, healthcare is getting cut, Social Security is at risk. All these things need to be addressed. And we need people who are going to do it who believe in public service. It's not going to happen by sending the same people to DC, backed by donors and insiders who are part of the problem, who led to the issues. We need to send people who have gotten stuff done, who understand how to fight corruption, how to work within the private sector and have done that, and also understand how the government works and how we can make things better for working family. And it starts with the basic things. When you wake up at the beginning of the day, you care about the same things. You want your family, you want to have a job, you want to have education, you want to have access to health care. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican, we have to find common ground. We're going to get this done. The Democratic Party used to be the party of the people. We need to get back to that. As a party, we need to have a plan, we need real leadership, and we need people with courage and conviction to get things done. Again, it's not about anyone here, it's about the people. That's who we answer to. We answer to the public. This is public service, and it's about helping people get ahead. We need to create opportunity. Right now, people don't feel like their voices are heard. And it's also about protecting all members of the community. You know, when Trump says, I killed DEI, it's outrageous. And we need to protect and make sure everyone has a voice and that we lift people up and give them opportunity and hope.
Thank you, John. Mariah?
I mean, we're going to have to keep shifting this one around. So corruption is nonpartisan. It doesn't care what party you're in. We have seen corruption on both sides of the aisle, quite frankly. This moment is not about left versus right. It is about top versus bottom. We are watching as the Epstein class walks free, while the working class is getting bound by the very rules that they're shaping. And races like this one will be what shapes the future of our government, the future of our party. Are we going to continue to elect millionaires and their friends? I am a person that can't afford to put $25,000, $100,000, $1 million into this campaign from my own pocket. But I encourage you to look at everybody's finances on the stage, where their campaign dollars are coming from, because that is who they're going to be accountable to. Are they going to be accountable to the people in this room? Are they only going to be accountable to themselves? Or are they going to be accountable to the voters of this district? Or special interests, right? As we've seen most of our government be dictated by. So we do need to be the party for social and economic equality, for civil rights, for human rights. We do that by making sure that we do not sacrifice our minority communities in the name of abandoning identity politics, right? That we actually stand up for the most vulnerable among us, for the disability community, for the LGBTQ+ community, for every single minority, for racial minorities within a state that is predominantly, let's face it, not always facing our own discrimination, right? Whether that's on housing, whether that's on healthcare. So the way we do this is we get money out of politics. We truly elect working people, and we create a different kind of party, the kind that is actually going to fight for the things that all of us need to not just survive, but thrive.
Thank you, Mariah. Trump?
And so we all hate Trump. I think that is the floor. Can we agree on that? I think that it is outrageous. I have to say, I came in during the first Trump administration. I came into office. I ran against a MAGA Republican during Trump 1.0 because I was that outraged, and they've only gotten worse. This past year, we've seen him strip away millions of dollars from healthcare. We have ICE and the National Guard rounding up residents, citizens from the streets. And we're just seeing our diplomatic ties eroding in front of our eyes. Of course we have to address that. Of course we have to address our democracy. Of course we have to hold Trump accountable. But that is not enough. What is the vision for the Democratic Party? How are we going to deliver for the people? That's why people are feeling disillusioned. They don't think that government is working for them. So we need to bring back results. We have to address economic justice and what that means to help working families. I'm a proud union member. I grew up in public housing. I grew up poor, not knowing where my parents were working because they were working multiple jobs. And so I know these things so personally, and that's why I fight for them so personally. And that's what we need in this moment, someone who understands that, someone who understands what it's like to stand in the food pantry line, someone who knows what it's like to fight for housing for people and to fight to keep Medicare. And for all of us, this is what the people want. We have to protect our people, but we also need to recognize that people can't put food on the table. They're not going to care about our democracy. So how do we get them to care again? By delivering for them and making sure that they have a fair shot at success. And that's what I'm committed to working with you. We have to do both delivering for the people and fight Trump. And that's how we're going to win back our party.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Jane, second question.
Hi, good evening. Thank you to the candidates for joining us this evening. I'm Deborah Lemieux of the amazing Danvers Democrats. And my question is, once elected, what actions will you take to demonstrate to voters your clear commitment to defending democratic norms, even at political risk? Will you expand the Supreme Court? Will you ban stock trading? Will you uphold integrity of elections? And will you hold Trump accountable? And if so, how?
Thanks, Deborah. That goes first to Dan.
Thank you very much. As I said before, it is essential that we recognize how serious this moment is in our democracy. We're about to celebrate our 250th anniversary, and we need to fight for what is left of our democracy under Donald Trump and restore it. So of course we need to expand the Supreme Court, because we all know that if Donald Trump inherited a 6-3 Democratic Supreme Court, he would have already added 10 people to the Supreme Court, right? We do need to ban stock trading, and I was proud when I was in the White House to sell all of my individual stocks to make sure that we were not having that kind of bad example being set. We have to make sure that we are doubling down on empowering our secretaries of state, of all of the people who are working at the polls that will come this primary as well as in the election itself, to make sure that they have what they need for the kind of integrity that we require for true democracy. We also just need to have people who are actually going to change the system and the way our politics are funded. I am very proud to have taken a no corporate PAC pledge, both during this primary, the general, and if I am fortunate enough to get elected. We have members of Congress on both sides of the aisle who are taking money from corporations instead of individuals. It is leading to a corrupt system, and it needs to end. Finally, we need to impeach the president. We need to impeach the cabinet members who are causing this corruption, and every single day expose what we are seeing as never, ever normal. I have seen how government can work well. This is the opposite of that, and I know how to root it out, and I will be fighting to do that every day. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Mariah?
We are seeing corruption erode the very core of our democracy, fundamentally. Democratic norms are out the window. We know that. But also part of the problem is that they've been guidelines and traditions for a very long time, and it is up to Congress to convert them into actual law. So yes, absolutely. As the next congressperson for this district, I will do that. To get at the questions directly, happy to expand the Supreme Court. We do need to make sure that we're doing it under a Democratic president, because we certainly don't want Trump appointing any right now, right? But we also need to pair that with ethics reforms. We can't just say, yeah, we're going to put more people on there and let them keep acting with reckless abandon. And we need to consider truly impeaching the sitting judges that have been violating foundational ethics for decades, that have been getting visibly bribed while sitting on the court. Holding Trump accountable is very complicated, because even if we impeach him now, then what, we have President Vance? I'm not sure that's much better, because either way, we still have Stephen Miller and Russell Vought. And so we have very fundamental problems with this administration that go far beyond Trump himself. We do need to ban congressional stock trading, or as most of us would call it, insider trading, because if any of us were doing what Congress is doing right now, we would be in prison. So that is a fundamental change we have to make. And the other piece is, how do we hold each other accountable as members of Congress? Because right now, people get censured. I think it's, 21 members ever have been expelled from Congress. 17 of those were because they were members of the Confederacy. So we have to fundamentally change how we hold members of Congress accountable as well. And at the end of the day, the buck stops with us as the voters. We cannot allow the power of incumbency to continue to protect members that are only acting in their own self-interest. We have to be willing to vote out incumbents and vote new people in that will actually do what's right for the American people.
Thank you, Mariah. John?
So yeah, so obviously what's going on with the Trump administration is ridiculous in terms of the level of corruption, and we need to stop it. We need to do things like abolish ICE. We need to make sure that we're protecting our system. We need to make sure that we have wars that are happening without congressional action. That needs to change. We also, we need to take a look at the corruption and holding people accountable, and also reforming our whole system. Yes, I agree with, we definitely need to ban stock trading. We need to take the money out of politics, overturn Citizens United. We need to consider term limits and reform the whole political system. In terms of the courts, I agree we need to take action. I'm in favor of term limits and strict ethics rules. But the problem with the courts right now, beyond the Supreme Court, is the weaponizing of the Justice Department and the politics in our court system in general. And we need to take a hard look at that, and that needs to be reformed. The same thing for elections. We need free and fair elections. And what's happening right now, you look at today, I finally had bipartisan support for a housing legislation to actually help people. And what happened? Trump leveraged his undemocratic SAVE Act to torpedo that legislation. So we need to hold firm on our principles. We need to protect the right to vote and the right to our democracy, and those things are very, very important. So I think it's about, really, if you're fortunate enough to be in Congress, it's being willing to fight, willing to stand up for your convictions, willing to make sure that we protect all these ideals as a democracy. You know, I'm a lawyer. The violation of the rule of law is outrageous to me in terms of seeing what's happened, especially in the immigration space. Again, this is a slippery slope, and this is why many of us are in this race. We've had enough, and we need to push back hard against it.
Thank you, John. Tron?
Look, I know what's at stake here. I came from an authoritarian regime. My dad served with the Americans during the Vietnam War, fighting for democracy and freedom, and was a political prisoner for 8 years, fighting for democracy and freedom. We came across the world, from Vietnam to here, for democracy and freedom, so you can bet that I will fight with every fiber of my being to defend our democracy. And what does that look like? I've been a lawyer, I've been a state representative, and every single time, every 2 years, I have to take an oath to uphold the Constitution, uphold our rule of law. Why is it that the same standards not being applied to those who are literally making the rules of our country? How is it that we have a president and his family benefiting from being in office? How is it that we have a felon who is our president? We need to codify these laws. We cannot rely on norms and conventions anymore. And this is not just about Trump. This is about holding all elected officials accountable, members of Congress, the Supreme Court, and anyone who's in public service. No one is above the law, including justices. And as a lawyer, I care deeply about justices being able to make decisions without political interference. But if they violate ethics, and if they are committing fraud and corruption, they need to be held accountable. That includes impeachment. And for me, I care deeply about term limits, because we should not sit here and wait for someone to depart or someone to decease for us to be able to get someone else in there. And also, we have to build a pipeline. Look at Project 2025. They've been planning this for 50 years. What are we doing as Democrats? So we have to build that pipeline. And I'm excited to see what other reforms and what others I can partner with to make sure that we are saving our democracy and how we see America moving forward.
Thank you, Tron. Jamie?
Thank you. So accountability is part of why I'm running. The Democratic Party has lost its grip, and this is why we have Trump. I will say this, the leadership that's in there right now has not done us any service as the common public. And when we're talking about banning stocks, I will say this, Hakeem Jeffries helped actually kill a petition earlier this year on congressional stock trading. That's the Speaker, or Speaker in waiting, of the House. I don't know about you, but I'm not running for Congress so that I can make money. My actual plan is to go work for you, and I'm not planning on being richer going in there than I am coming out. But that's who's in there right now. And the Democratic leadership has gone along to get along. That's not accountability. I'm accountable to you. You are the ones who are going to tell me what you need, what we need to do for this district. It's not going to be somebody writing me a check or giving me insider stock trading. Now, when it comes to the Supreme Court, I do not believe that we need to expand it, because I don't want the other side to be doing the same thing. We have guardrails in place. I do support term limits. But I also want to say this. I believe we need stronger ethics as well, and greater transparency, and getting dark money out of our elections. We also need to be strengthening our judicial ethics and start talking about what can we do with the Supreme Court that we currently have, and do the work. Congress needs to start doing its job. The reason why we aren't able to have campaign finance reform is because they've not been able to pass it. We don't have abortion care anymore because they didn't take care of it. We don't have a Voting Rights Act because they didn't do their job. So we need to actually keep our Democratic Party accountable. And again, this is part of why I'm running.
Thank you, Jamie. Bethany?
Yeah, so I stepped up to challenge Seth Moulton, so I'm obviously willing to take political risks. But this right now goes beyond political risks. We have political prisoners in jail right now in America who are just sentenced to 50 years in jail. We have people in concentration camps in America right now, and we need leaders willing to go beyond just, we'll apply the rules, we'll restore the way things were. We need people willing to put our actual physical safety on the line if we are going to stand up to totalitarians. When I was deciding to challenge Seth Moulton, I went to one of his town halls. And at the end, an older man walked up to him and said, "Sir, I'm a veteran, and we need you to be willing to go to jail before we do." And I decided to run for Congress because I am willing to go to jail before you do. And if you are put in jail, I will go there and be there with you. I will be creative about how we make their lives miserable every time they try this bullshit. We should be sitting in that pool, stopping them from painting it. We should have shown up at the East Wing that they were demolishing and attempted to chain ourselves to our historical monument he was ripping down. I come from an activist tradition, not a political, not Washington, D.C. insider politics. I know that when things are wrong, you take action, you don't just complain about it. You don't just say, I am outraged, you take outrageous action. When there are consequences for their actions, they will behave differently, and we can create those consequences for them.
Thank you, Bethany. Thank you, everybody.
Good evening, candidates. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. My name is Anne-Lauren Joko. I'm a proud Danvers resident, and my question is, what is your plan to remediate the risks of AI, including the impact to young adults entering the workforce and the impact on our young children, specifically their socialization and critical thinking skills? Additionally, what specific policies will you support to ensure effective oversight?
Jamie, that's first for you.
Okay, thank you. I ask for some grace as I make sure that we don't have what Lowell is dealing with in our backyard right now, right? I mean, the reality is that we have a live test model with these AI data centers in CD3. And anyone that has been following this on Instagram knows the incessant noise, the water that this is pulling, the enormity of this facility is not something that we want in our district. It is not something that I'm looking to give anyone tax cuts on. I think that we can be responsible about AI, and when I'm in Congress, the first person I will call is Beth, because we're going to put her in charge as the chair of AI data centers for the United States. Okay? It's phenomenal. You know, but the reality is that it is becoming a dystopian reality for people in real time. And it's also taking away from our environment. 17 communities in this district are on the Ipswich River. How's that working out for us? Not so well. We've been in a drought, I think, for 5 years now. And the last thing we need to do is give someone tax breaks or say, BYOP, bring your own power. It is not something that our district needs. Now, as a mom of two teenage girls who love their phone more than they love their mother, I will tell you this, okay? The risks of AI are out there, but they're learning in school to identify what this is. Our educators are actually helping them with this, but I know it's a clear risk to mental health because they're watching 30-second clips and they think that that is reality, and it's not.
Thank you, Jamie. Trom?
AI must serve humanity and not the other way around. And I guess we have to address the hidden, but I guess not so hidden costs of loss of jobs, impact on young people, energy and water demands. And so this is why I'm a huge supporter of a moratorium on any future building of data centers. But for me, what is most important, especially as a union member, as someone who's done labor and employment, I am very concerned about how AI could be used as a tool for corporate exploitation. And that's exactly what we need to address. And that's something we can address right now. Ordinary people, workers, are asked to absorb these costs while companies collect these profits. And so I support a full ban on AI being used to replace humans, especially for safety critical and public facing roles such as healthcare and public transportation. We need to have a training program in place, a robust training program to train our workers and to have workers who are being displaced by AI get jobs that are well-paid union jobs and that could allow them to support their families. We also need to make sure that we protect data, biometric data, and performance data, as well as not allowing employers to use AI to surveil their employees and monitor union organizing or track lawful off-duty activities. We need federal standards, I have to say that, but That should be the floor, not the ceiling. We have to allow states to come up with measures that could actually protect our people. And those are the things that I've worked on and will continue to work on.
Thank you, John. Dan?
I think it's really important to outline what the stakes are and what we're currently facing with this president. This president approved, through Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, autonomous AI-driven weapons by OpenAI. That's what we're currently facing. We're facing people in the White House who are allowing AI to be unregulated. And I was very proud when I was part of the Biden administration to be a part of the first AI executive order ever to be rolled out in our country. And there are many parts that we could talk about, but right now I want to focus on what I worry about every day as a dad, which is the implications on our children. Already, 1 in 3 kids under the age of 18 are using AI chatbots as a replacement for a human being. There have been many categorized incidents of kids committing suicide because their AI chatbot taught them how to do it and told them to do it. And yet, they're not held accountable. They're still making all this money. And no one is stepping up and saying that that's unacceptable, that in America, we need to protect our children. We already failed to do that when social media was first rolled out. We have to hold social media companies accountable. We have to hold these AI companies accountable. People have already said other things about job loss. It's absolutely true. Our first duty is to the next generation, and we need to make sure to protect them. And I would do that every day as a member of Congress.
Thank you, Dan. Mariah?
So I agree with a lot of what my colleagues have said. We do need to make sure that we are putting people first over any aspect of AI. That means prioritizing people over profits. That means making sure that we're putting labor protections in place. We know that what's happening is companies have overinvested in AI technologies, and so the only way that they can remain profitable is to now lay off workers. It's not because the technology actually can replace those workers. It's because it's either that or admit to their shareholders that they're now in the red. So that is why we are seeing mass layoffs. It's not actually because the technology is doing what it's theoretically doing, right? Now, even if, let's say, it is truly that effective and that it is, an assistant to every person, okay. But then we should be talking about how to make our lives better, right? We shouldn't be talking about everybody now working 40, 50, 60 hours a week using these tools, becoming managers without the pay bump, right? What we need to be doing is giving them a 4-day work week, making life better for us through the use of these technologies. In terms of the mental health protections, yes, we need to make sure that there are safeguards, but frankly, call me a Luddite. I'm not really sure that these technologies are as good as people are saying anyway. People say, I've heard people on this stage before say that they have incredible promise in medicine. Meanwhile, I do not want an AI tool determining whether or not that x-ray says whether or not I should go to surgery, right? We need human beings doing the jobs that they are trained to do, actually reviewing work, making sure that we are all safe. The other piece of this is that these are all CEOs outrunning the regulations that we're all talking about putting into place, right? Whoever's on the stage that's going to get elected won't take office until January of next year. Meanwhile, these technologies are zooming ahead in the business marketplace, and the CEOs who are profiting from that are paying into elections just like this one.
Thank you, Mariah. Bethany?
Yeah, so I'll vote for a moratorium, but anyone who thinks that's the solution is not serious. People are willing to acknowledge the problems, but very few people are talking about solutions, which is why I had to run for Congress to get attention on actual specific solutions that we can do. To protect people, we can have the same consumer protection laws that keep your microwave from exploding apply to software. My industry has been off the hook for 50 plus years. There's no reason to let us keep dodging the laws that protect consumers when people sell them things that do not work, were badly designed, were broken on purpose because it's cheaper to do it badly than it is to fulfill their promises. It's easy to say, oh, we'll just get smart people in, but we know Congress is listening to CEOs. We know Congress is paying attention to the people who have money, We want things. The horse is already out of the barn on some of these, like you said, with the data center in Lowell. Right, Elon Musk has illegal diesel generators running, and the federal government is protecting him. So even if we shut things down today, there's already stuff out there. Instead, I want to paint a positive vision for people of a world where these things fund Social Security, where they pay for journalism and art so we can have more, not less, in the age of AI. And these slop factories are not regular data centers. These things are monstrosities. There are companies out there today building data centers that respect our environment, that enable the Instagram where people are reading about data centers. All of that relies on regular data centers. These are slop factories. And there is no reason for our government to continue to allow slop factories to take over our farmlands, drive up our energy prices, and leave us worse off than we were before.
Thank you, Bethany. John?
So my whole career has been built around regulation. I've done some work around emerging technology and financial services, including AI and things like cryptocurrency. And as a chief compliance officer, my role was to identify risks and things such as money laundering, detect those, report them to government, work with law enforcement to bring action against criminal activity. We need guardrails, we need regulation, but we also need the right level. We need to make sure we are responsibly innovating. There are good things with AI and other technology that we can take advantage of and that can help people, but we have to be wary of the risks. You know, I teach a regulatory class at BU Law, and I tell my students, how do you regulate technology? You have to understand the activities and the risks. And we discussed a lot of the risks here, you know, risks to the environment with data centers and usage of energy. The risks of job displacement, which is real. There was a tough study that said Massachusetts is probably the highest state with the highest risk of job displacement. The risks to our children and social media, and then the risks we don't even know about. This technology is moving so quickly. That's the problem with legislation and regulation. Technology is always going to move quickly, and we have to have guardrails in place. We have to have a system. I'm a proponent of having an Office of Innovation at the federal level to look at these things, to make sure that we have licensing and certification standards, that make sure that it's not a one and done thing. It has to be ongoing. It has to be done on an ongoing basis. And you need people who understand the technology and are educated about that. Really, we see in Congress, you see some people in Congress don't even know how to turn on their computer. So you need people who are, with all these technologies, it's like I said, the risks are real, and we need to make sure that we're innovating responsibly, moving into the 21st century, but very, very wary of the risks and have the appropriate guardrails in place.
Thank you, John.
Hello, thank you all for coming. My name is Lucy Desmond, and I'm a proud member of the Danvers Dems and a young Danvers Dem. And my question is about affordability. People under 35 are trying and expected to pay off debt, student loans, save for retirement, buy homes, and start families all at the same time. Which of these challenges should Congress prioritize first, and what are you willing to deprioritize to address it?
Sure. Let's start with what I'll deprioritize. How about some unconstitutional foreign war? How about that for starters? We've spent, over $100 billion right now just in Iran. How about the funding of the genocide in Gaza and corporate handouts, tax giveaways for the wealthy? All that being said, at 36, I'm right in that camp, right? I am one medical emergency away from destitution. And it really does help if we don't have a president that vetoes bipartisan bills, for starters, things that will actually help open up the housing market and build more affordable housing. When it comes to student debt, so I took out loans for undergrad, but mostly graduate school. I said this in my opening, but I've never missed a payment in 9 years, and it has grown by $70,000. So we need to get rid of interest on student loans at the very least. I'm in favor of full cancellation, but the interest is predatory. The interest on my loans, 5 to 8%. There are students today graduating with 15%. And meanwhile, this administration is trying to completely demolish the Department of Education. So we need to invest in education. We need to invest in free public college. We need to invest in universal pre-K. We need to make building a family possible. I have one of my best friends lives right over here in Beverly, and she had a son when we were in our 20s, and now we talk about it. You want to have another kid now we're in our 30s? No, can't begin to afford it. My friends that have kids have had to quit their jobs because the cost of daycare is higher than their rent. It is insane the extent to which life is completely unaffordable for young people right now. And that is part of why, as a young person, I am running. I'm the youngest person in this race. And that is a perspective that we need in Congress, because the folks that are there don't understand. Education policy wasn't always even in my portfolio, but I found myself sitting with Congress people going, let me help you understand this. So I appreciate the question, and thank you so much for asking it.
Thank you, Mariah. Jamie?
So, yeah, we talked about the housing situation and the reality of the student loans. I will echo all of this. The banking industry runs this country, right? They're making money. They made money during COVID, during a global pandemic. And you saw money moving all over the place. And for the fact of the matter that I paid 9% on my student loans, and you're talking 15%, the fact that that's legal, do you know right now that interest on a credit card is upwards of 27%? And it's legal. We have to stop subsidizing and not putting constraints on banks in this country. I think for housing, which is a way to obtain generational wealth, correct? It is. It gives you that nest egg. It allows you to build. My house is worth so much money right now, I don't even know where I would move if I sold it, but it is something that we need to be focused on.
Thank you, Jamie. Bethany?
Thank you. I first became a Democrat because of Howard Dean, because he told me that he's the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party, and it cares about student loans. It cared about the cost of college, the cost of housing, the things that I, as a 17 and 18-year-old, were actually facing. And I know today, when we talked about student loan debt during the 2020 election, when Castro and then Warren talked about student loan forgiveness, it came with free public college. And somehow, by the time Biden's campaign got around to it, free public college had disappeared. And we tried for student loan forgiveness, and it got shot down by the courts, and we shrugged our shoulders and said, oh, well. We need to follow through when we're fighting for these things. And we need a sufficiency mindset. We need to say that this isn't about us versus them. Everybody is suffering from housing crisis. And that it was just that young people were the canary in the coal mine. If we had responded when young millennials were unable to buy houses, we would not have the housing crisis we have today. So if we address the problems that people have, we can stop these devastating consequences before they start. We shouldn't just be throwing around words like affordability. We should be making things affordable. We should be addressing the inflation that cost us the 2024 election. We need to repeal the Fair Cloth Amendment. This thing called the Fair Cloth Amendment. It keeps the federal government from being part of the solution on housing. There's this law that they passed. They were just like, nope, we're not going to do anything about housing. And we can get rid of that. We can build housing where jobs are so that our traffic gets better. Because I don't know about you, but Route 118 is a miserable experience, and that is a policy choice. Every time I sit there waiting for the left-hand turn, I am cursing out some ancient politicians who made decisions that have got us to this point where I have to sit in traffic right now. So I look forward to taking these challenges on, and it's not about what we deprioritize, it's about all of the things we prioritize so we can make our lives better.
Thank you, Bethany. John?
Yeah, where do we even start? I mean, the list is long. We see kids or young adults, 25 to 36, leaving the state in record numbers. First-time home buyer, 40 years old. Child care costs over $20,000. The list goes on and on. We need to address this. This is job one in terms of giving people a real opportunity to get ahead and live here and have a good life. And so it's important that we look at things like housing and the crisis that we have here and make housing more affordable, both for buyers and renters. We need to offer credits for home buyers and home sellers. We need to create more affordable housing and transportation to support housing and allow people to travel to and from and around the district. We need to look at creating real opportunities for young people, things starting with vocational schools and different types of training. We're talking about AI, about different training and different career paths. Right now, there's a waiting list, there's a lottery system for vocational schools here. And yes, we do need loan forgiveness because, you know, whereas a lot of us, like myself, I was saddled with a lot of debt coming out of law school, was able to work through it. Today, you can't do it because the prices are too high. $1,700 per family for from these tariffs. Again, we got to bring these costs down, and it's got to be a holistic approach. It's not just putting Band-Aid on the problem. It's also got to create real jobs here in the district. We have 80% of the business is small business. We need to help them with SBA lending, with credits, relieving some of the healthcare costs that they're facing. It's about making sure that we're bringing real opportunity to people of all ages, frankly. You know, we have our also aging population that we're not taking care of as well. But in terms of the young people, it's about making sure that they're the priority. And as far as deprioritizing, it's anything that's against that, which is either credit to corporations or wealthy, or making sure that we're distracted with all kinds of things and wars and, you know, certainly under this administration, what the Republicans are doing. So it's about making sure that we're prioritizing working families here in the district.
Thank you, John. Jerome?
Our budget is a reflection of our values. We cannot afford to deprioritize anything related to affordability because we were just talking earlier about disillusionment. That's exactly why young people feel disillusioned right now. They can't afford to buy a home in this moment in time. Frankly, I can't even afford to buy my own house right now if we hadn't bought it during the recession in 2011. And so how could we expect them to be engaged in government where they're struggling to put food on the table? They can't afford rent or to buy a home. They can't, and they're saddled with student loan debt. And as someone who has benefited from student loans, whether that's the Pell Grant or the Public Service Loan Forgiveness, these are programs that need to be extended because we need people in these jobs. And so how do we incentivize them to get into these jobs? By making sure that college is affordable. And the things that we've been able to do here in Massachusetts have worked. And we need to be able to extend them at the federal level. That includes free community colleges, that includes a higher minimum wage, that includes access to paid and family medical leave, that includes making sure that we are making the right investments in your education or your ability to be able to live productive lives. And I think that young people are the most scrappy out of all of us. You have to be in this generation. So how do we encourage entrepreneurship of people being able to make a living however they could? But I also think labor protections is very key in all of this because as someone who's done labor and employment, I want to make sure that you have the protections of as employees. But all of this is to say that this is exactly why you need someone in Congress who comes from an immigrant blue-collar family who knows what it's like to be scrappy, to struggle to put food on the table and struggle to actually make a life for myself. I made $42,000 out of law school, so I know what it's like to struggle.
Thank you, Jerome. Deanne?
We have a president who made an affordability crisis even worse in his days in office with his illegal wars that have driven up gas prices for all of us by more than 60%. That kind of inflation is reflected not just in gas, but in groceries, utility bills, everything that you all are experiencing. And he's trying to trick all of us into thinking that we can't afford to do the things that will bring prices down. But that's a load of crap. It's a question of our priorities. Again, we gave a tax cut to the world's first trillionaire, the proceeds of which would have made lives easier all across this country. The agenda I outlined about lowering childcare costs, lowering utility bills, lowering housing costs would put the average MA6 voter with $23,000 more in your pocket every single year. And in the Biden administration, I was proud to deliver on a number of different issues. The most ambitious climate agenda in the history of our country, an ambitious bipartisan infrastructure agenda. We lowered the cost of prescription drugs. We allowed Medicare to negotiate prescription drug costs for the first time in history. We retired billions and billions of dollars in student loans. This is what bold Democratic ideas and agenda can do, and we should not settle for the kind of Donald Trump's America that we are suffering through every day that only enriches one person, Donald Trump and his family members.
Thank you, Dan. Question 5.
Hi, I'm Barbara Devereaux from the Danvers Dems. Thank you all for coming tonight. Social Security is projected to begin to run out of money in 6 years. What actions will you take to protect Social Security and to protect the seniors on fixed incomes who are already impacted by increased medical, housing, food, and utility costs, all while trying to maintain their autonomy?
Trump.
Social Security is a promise that we made to workers that when you retire, you get to do so with dignity and security, and we have to uphold that promise. When I think about this, I think of my own parents, both of whom are retired and on fixed incomes. My mom's health insurance she's on a fixed income of $1,000. It went up to $235 this past January. She's lucky that I'm able to pay for her, but what about the thousands of people out there who don't have that sort of assistance? So this is exactly why we have to talk about affordability and how to make sure that they can access their healthcare, prescription costs, and also housing is going to be a huge piece of this. How do we work to help seniors age in place when there's no housing supply for them to downsize, or for their grandkids or kids to move in to be closer to them? I know my parents have 2 granddaughters, and trust me, they want to be near them. But what we're talking about, the reality for so many seniors is that we cannot afford to cut benefits to Medicare and Medicaid. We cannot afford to cut back on the age. And you know how we're going to pay for this? By scrapping the cap on the ultra wealthy. That's exactly what we need to do. While we have nurses and teachers having to pay every dollar into the system, the ultra rich, they stop paying after a certain amount of time. At $250,000, we need to tax the entire thing. And also, we have to start taxing wealth and not just work. Wall Street dividends and high earner portfolios should be taxed the exact same way that we tax a regular hard day's work. And that revenue will inject billions of dollars back into the trust fund to keep it safe for years to come. We have done many of these things here in the Commonwealth, Fair Share Amendment, to make sure that we're investing in our education and transportation. That's what we need to do at the federal level as well.
Thank you, John. John?
Yeah, so as much as we mentioned a crisis for young people, older people are really facing it, and it's becoming harder and harder. Certainly, again, when we look at the affordability and the cost to live here, people who are relying on Social Security, it's very difficult. There's a lot of challenges across the board. You know, housing is a big issue in terms of people are either stuck in their house, they can't downsize, the real estate tax keeps going up and up. And healthcare, we should be addressing the healthcare issues. You can't get access to healthcare. We should be expanding coverages, not cutting it like we saw with the big, beautiful bill. But Social Security itself, again, is something, it's not a handout. We've all paid into it. It should be there. It's part of the future, and there should never be any cuts to it. Similarly, like there should never be cuts to Medicare or Medicaid. And we should make sure that we're protecting it. And all these actions that are being taken by Republicans right now are ensuring it's going to go insolvent, or they're making the matters worse. And so we need people who are going to go down there and fight for it to make sure that we're protecting, making sure that, you know, none of these potential reforms that we're talking about, like raising the retirement age or means testing or these other things, we're not having anything of it. And the biggest solution here is lifting the cap. We need to lift the cap. We need to make sure that Social Security is paid for and is guaranteed for people who need it, who have paid for it, and it's part of a fundamental right, actually, for people to have at their disposal at the end of the day. And the final thing is, we also need, along with these other cuts, not only to Social Security, but the SSA, the administration, this is part of all these agencies being cut. It's harder to even get access. It's harder to be able to pick up a phone and call. It's harder to be able to go to an office. They're all closed. I think we got to also address the administration issues as well as the financial issues that are happening on this administration, which is really hurting people in the district and across the country.
Thank you, John. Mariah?
Social Security, meant to make us all secure. It is our dollars, your dollars, that you are owed back. All of us are owed back, right? Anything less is theft from us. And we need to call that what it is. So part of what is not being talked about enough right now in terms of Social Security is that what the Republicans want us to believe is that it's going to go bust and then there'll be no money for anybody. Right now, as the current situation stands, if we do nothing, checks might shrink, but they will never disappear because the money that's paid in year after year continues to go into the system, right? But we still can't let them shrink. Don't get me wrong. We need to make sure that they're there. The money is there. As some of my colleagues said, we need to be taxing the rich to actually make sure that we're getting enough revenue into the system to be able to pay out as promised, as deserved, as entitled, right? But the reason that Republicans want you to believe that things will go bust is because they want you to believe that there's a reason for Congress to pass a bill right now to change things. Because as of right now, that is what will gut the system. That is why they're pushing for things like raising the retirement age, is it's a sense of manufactured panic that they are trying to induce to get the American public to go along with it, and we cannot allow it. What we need is to restructure the revenue system to make sure that we reform our tax code, make the rich pay their fair share, and actually protect these social, secure programs that we, as Americans, deserve and have paid into our whole lives. Full stop.
Thank you, Mariah.
Yeah, of course.
Dan?
Yeah, this is a president who has made very clear his intentions with seniors and taking care of all of us. He doesn't want to just gut Social Security. He wants to privatize Social Security. That's what the Republican goal is, and it's been for decades. He is trying to choke the entire entity. He's trying to drive the wait times up. He wants those wait times higher to fuel his cynical argument about privatization. It's disgusting, and we can't let it happen. Like so many of my colleagues on the stage, I agree. We need to double down on investing in Social Security, reducing the wait times, modernizing, making sure people get the services that they deserve. People have the futures that they deserve. We are in a very dangerous time on so many parts of the very fundamentals of our promise to our seniors and to so many others in our society. When it comes to Social Security, we need to double down on empowering our seniors. And we need people in Congress who are going to fight every day to make sure that they get what they deserve.
Thank you, Dan. Bethany?
So Social Security was based on two promises. One was that if you pay in, you'll get money back. But the second promise was that you will be better off than your parents were. So covering the promise that was made before is not a burden on you. And it is that second promise that we broke first. That is why we are struggling today to cover the cost of Social Security, is because we do not have enough people being paid enough money to cover the costs that Congress promised. So the solution here, yes, we should raise the cap. But what they don't talk about is that's an only 5-year fix. We're right back to deficits. I have been able to save money in my life, and I will care for taxpayer dollars with the same care I have taken with my own. We need to look ahead and see where the dollars that should be going to working people have gone. And it's to the people who own the robots. So we need to tax the corporations that are making money without employing people and take back the payroll taxes that they have stolen from all of us and put those back into the system. We also have ended up in this situation because young people are so often shut out of our democracy. When you move, if you are a renter, your lease is probably up on September 1st. That is the day our primary is. And that is not an accident. We need to make sure that every person, young or old, has access to the ballot, has transportation to get there, can be represented in this democracy, so that when we have problems begin, like people being unable to get entry-level jobs. Young people's dream occupation now is influencer. We need to start addressing those problems immediately and not have to wait until we have consequences all the way down the line, 16 steps on with Social Security.
Thank you, Bethany. Jamie?
You know, my problem with Social Security is that it's called an entitlement in Congress. I don't feel entitled when I'm going to potentially retire around 85 at the rate it's going right now, to take the money that I've been paying into a system since 1989. I'm also very concerned about two things. Contracting our immigration, never mind the jailing and the concentration camps and the separations of moms and babies and all the things. Take the money that we're funding ICE, put it back into our communities, put it back into our systems, stop giving pharmaceutical companies a pass, stop taking money and putting it into the military, stop funding wars overseas, stop doing all of these things so we can take care of the people here. As a woman, I'm very concerned about women who live longer than men, and a lot of women in a particular generation who stayed home to take care of their children. I think everyone should be getting an automatic $75,000 a year put into their Social Security if they're staying home raising kids. Anyone here done that 24-hour job and gotten a salary? No. That is 24/7 labor. Again, this country doesn't care about women's health. We want to take your voting rights away. This a-hole down in Washington that we talked about, he's going to freaking hold up a housing bill because daddy wants the SAVES Act? Because he doesn't want women voting. And we sure as shit don't want 80-year-old women having access to any sort of wealth or have any way to pay for their food or anything. So it is all of the things, the big scary Trump, but not for nothing. I was raised during the big scary Reagan, and if you don't think that this is a result of that, then you got it wrong. And it's time for us to start straightening this stuff out because the train is moving forward. It's not moving backward, and we need to make sure that our seniors have affordability, that they can stay where they are in their homes, and they have access to prescriptions.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, everyone. We're going to question 6.
Hi, my name's Ellen Graham. I've been a registered nurse for over 30 years. And I have to say, our healthcare is shameful. And here's a complicated question for you. Healthcare costs are out of control, with many unable to afford necessary care or prescription medications. What actions will you take to ensure everyone has access to affordable, comprehensive health care and prescription drug coverage? And how will you hold insurers, pharmaceutical companies, and providers accountable for controlling costs while maintaining quality care? Please include where you stand on private insurance versus single payer.
This is directed first to Bethany.
Thank you. Yeah, so after waiting tables, I got a job working at Boston Medical Center. And I got to see firsthand how important primary care is and how woefully underfunded it is. I don't know any hospital that is making money on primary care. And profit is the problem in this. I saw a pharmaceutical company the other day that's making 20% profit. We are having to wait 20 years before medications become affordable. At one point, 1 out of every $400 in the United States federal budget was going to just one medication, Eliquis. But primary care nobody has figured out how to do that. And as a result, we massively underinvest in it. So I support Medicare for All that actually applies to everyone and make sure that everyone has access to fundamental care. I also want to massively invest in community health centers, which do primary care. They do other amazing work as well, but they make sure that everyone has access to a primary care physician who can follow their care. As you're bouncing around to 6 or 7 different specialties, it might take you 6 months to schedule something. One person who is paying attention and making sure that the tests that need to be run are run, that this one person that's looking at all of the results, not just some of them. One person who's going back and considering, is that medication you're on still the right one 5 years later? My grandfather is 90 years old, and he is so excited because his doctor told him that they've been keeping his blood sugar way too low. He should eat more sweets and pick up soda. So excited. So I want to massively invest in this care around America so everyone has access to that relationship.
Thank you, Bethany. John?
So you're right, the healthcare is a disaster. I mean, RFK Jr. and Dr. Oz, come on, this is crazy. We need to fix it. And it starts with pushing back or reversing what happened with the big beautiful bill, if you want to call it that. The cuts to Mass Health and SNAP are egregious. I mean, you look at SNAP, if you've visited a food pantry here on the North Shore, Salem Food Pantry, Open Door, 40% of families here on the North Shore in Massachusetts suffer from food insecurity. That shouldn't happen in Massachusetts, in America. And that's, for me, is job one. We need to deal with that. But in terms of our healthcare coverage, everybody needs to have access to healthcare coverage. I'm a supporter of Medicare for all who want it, which is a public option. I think if you have a negotiated private insurance, union negotiated insurance, you can have access to that if you think it's a better plan, but everybody needs access to affordable healthcare. We also need to protect the Affordable Care Act and the subsidies. About 34,000 residents will lose access to that. We need to make sure we're protecting that. We need to cap the cost of prescription drugs and have Medicare negotiate those drug prices and make sure people can get access to the prescriptions that they need. And we should be expanding Medicare, not pulling back. It should be covering dental and vision and hearing. I don't know what we're doing, especially when we're in a health crisis in so many areas. Mental health should be expanding. Veterans benefits should be expanding. And elder care, as we have an aging population. These things are all important. We also need to help our healthcare workers. They're not getting the support that they need. They're not able to get the fair wages that they need. We're losing that talent here in the state and elsewhere, and we need to support them as well. So I think it's all about making sure that we protect our program. We make sure the bottom line is that everybody has access to health care. It's a fundamental right, and we're going the wrong way in all this stuff.
Thank you, John. Dan?
So we are seeing a president who took away premiums for people who are relying on them, people seeing their bills go up 300% overnight. And candidly, it's a symptom of a much larger problem. Our healthcare system in this country is woefully underfunded, broken, and people are going bankrupt and dying just because they're getting sick in the richest country in the world. So we need Medicare for all. We need everybody to be covered. And when it comes to primary care, absolutely. And I think we need to go further. We need to reform the entire system and treat primary care like a public right and not something that private insurers can just dole out. So what's my idea? We make every single private health insurer pay into a common fund, and that money then facilitates all primary care. What does that mean for you? That means you will not lose your primary care physician if you move jobs. You have a fundamental right to access. It also significantly reduces the administrative burden for the primary care professionals in their office, which will create more supply for primary care professionals so that no longer will 1 in 3 people in this country ever not have a primary care professional because it's too hard to find one or it takes too long to get one. That's a disgrace in this country. If we all had access to primary care professionals faster, we would go to the doctor, we'd be able to treat things earlier, and in a country as wealthy as the United States, it is an abomination that we don't do that today. I was Chief of Staff of the Department of Labor. I oversaw one of the divisions of the Department of Labor that would implement this program, and on day one, I would work to make that a reality.
Thank you, Dan. Jamie?
So I've been chief of staff of my household for 20 years now. And I'll tell you that me keeping track of all of my appointments for my husband and myself and my kids, and then sometimes my mother, I see how incredibly lopsided this is. I've been very transparent in saying we had to carry $20,000 plus in out-of-pocket expenses for my daughter for a health crisis several years ago, and thank you for staying in this game. Here's what I'd like to see, and there's a bill in Massachusetts that's never going to see the light of day, I don't think, that we could do in the federal government, and that's tie Medicare for all, by the way. Hello. That saved my life and my kids. I got laid off at 8 months pregnant, okay? Because we don't have any worker rights in this country. So going back to what you're talking about, we need to make sure that if there are hospitals receiving taxpayer dollars, that you aren't making 50 times more than the average worker is in that hospital. You need to start having measurables that you're going to deliver on, outcomes to say that if you're getting paid this, you better have this, this, and this. And I'm talking racial equity, racial competency, reduced maternal mortality, reduced infant mortality, reduced deaths in the hospital. Who in here is concerned about going into the hospital so that you don't come out with the virus and die from that? Exactly, right? But we continue to allow $10 million CEOs to be calling the shots on someone's breast cancer surgery. The entire system, again, is run by who has money and who doesn't. And if we take that out of it, the system will work and we can do it. It should be about people. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Mariah?
Thank you. As the only healthcare worker in this race, this is near and dear to me. I will say, obviously I chose the career pathway in the medical field, but my sister's a nurse, my brother's an EMT, my mom, my single mom raised the three of us on a career in healthcare data analysis. And you'd think, she started her career working at a small startup, and then over the years it got that diagram of the small fish getting eaten by the big fish, right? That vertical integration that we talk about happening in the healthcare industry. By the end of her career, she was working for United Healthcare. They were doing layoffs right and left. She didn't ever accept a promotion in her entire career because she knew that every single time they got consolidated, it was the managers that would get laid off. And she had 3 kids to raise. She couldn't afford to do that. So she's been her whole career that way. By the end, they were doing layoffs. She wanted severance. It was time to retire. She ended up having to quit. These companies do not care about you. They do not care about me. They do not care about their employees. Getting rid of private insurers would be a boon for each and every one of us. We need Medicare for all. We need it yesterday, and we cannot continue to just subsidize these private insurance companies and then ask them to pay some sort of tax. No. We are just taking our tax dollars and putting them into executives' pockets. Meanwhile, they're buying up our private doctors. They're buying up our pharmacies. They're implementing pharmacy benefit managers who aren't doctors, but they're somehow getting to decide what medicines you get. My brother and I, my sister, all 3 of us have had complex health conditions. I was diagnosed with hereditary epilepsy in high school. My medications every month are more than $500, and I am fully insured. We cannot live this way. We do not have to. And that is why, as a medical professional, I ask for you to send me to Congress to fight this system, dismantle it, and create something better for all of us.
Thank you, Mariah. Trump?
Healthcare is a fundamental right, period. And people should not have to choose between their health and putting food on the table. And I can tell you, I've cared about this issue way before it was cool. I joined the legislature in 2019, and I joined the Medicare for All caucus right away, pushing for comprehensive healthcare and making sure that we're addressing drug coverage. And I support Medicare for All for everyone. And how we're going to pay for that is by taxing multimillionaires and billionaires who've been rigging the system. And for me, in this race, there's a clear difference. I don't believe in restrictions or qualifications for people to get access to Medicare for All. And so, but until we get there to that single payer system, some of the things that we can do: protect Medicare and Medicaid, expand and restore the subsidies. I mentioned to you how harmful that's been to my mother and so many others. But also, we have to strengthen connector care and lower out-of-pocket costs. But in addition to that, let's crack down on the pharmacy benefit managers, PPMs. They're the middlemen taking all this money and all the while increasing costs for everyone. And I have to say, thank you so much for your work. I cannot believe this administration decided to call nurses not professionals, so you don't have access to student loans. That is outrageous. We're not having enough, we don't have enough people in this industry, in the healthcare industry, and we need them more than ever. And so all of these things are so important as we're pushing forward. And just lastly, community health center. They are the center of primary care. We have to make the investments necessary.
Thank you, Tom. Question 7.
Hello, my name is Jim Conrad. My question is, due to the danger of the Trump regime, as we all know, we're focused on national issues tonight, in generally speaking. What I'd like to know is which local in-district issue are you most passionate about, and what's your plan to resolve it? The one issue.
That goes to Dan first.
I think the issue that's most local to everyone is their health and is healthcare. Because if you're not healthy in this country, you don't feel like you can get up and go to work or do anything, then that is the most pressing thing in your life. So whether it be Social Security benefits to make sure people are feeling like they can live, whether it be have the right access to Medicare, and a Medicare that is actually fighting for you, that is seeing lower prescription drugs because we have an administration or a Congress who is fighting to lower the cost of prescription drugs like we did in the Biden administration. Whether it is fighting to make sure that Medicaid is funded the way not only it's been in the past, but doubled down to give people the care that they deserve. We have a president who, under the lie of work requirements, are kicking people off of their Medicare every single day, and it's only getting worse. So there are so many local issues we need to address, and I'm sure that there are so many we can discuss, but if you don't have your health, then I think it's much harder to address them. And so we need to make sure that people are healthy in this district, that we are investing in that health. I totally agree on community health centers so that people can thrive.
Thank you, Dan. Bethany?
Thank you. Middleton still has a town meeting, and so I know the impact education has on our property taxes. It's more than half of Middleton's budget is supporting education, and even that is underfunding. We have had to organize to fight for raises for our teachers just to get them towards par. We've had to fight for a new heating and air conditioning system because the old one lit on fire. Education spending has been has been demonized by Republicans for a very long time. But the truth is we are underspending on young people, and we are putting the burden on homeowners. And in particular, we get mandates from the federal government that come with wildly insufficient funding to cover what is asked of our towns. So I will make sure that the ADA is fully funded so that every child in America, regardless of the support they need, has access to education. And it means we stop punishing the towns that are doing what we want them to do. It's not going to solve everything. It's clear that the funding formulas in Massachusetts have some idiosyncrasies to them. But if federal funding was here for the things that are most unpredictable, we could plan for the rest of it. We could have more affordable property taxes so people can stay comfortably in their homes. And we could invest in things like Middleton still doesn't have sewer, right? Half of the town doesn't have city water. Ancient Rome figured this stuff out. We could have the money to spend on that if the things that we know day in, day out, we are going to have to pay for could be covered from federal dollars.
Thank you, Bethany. Mariah?
I feel like it was going to be me. I saw you look at me, Lou. So I've talked a lot tonight already about my healthcare perspectives and my education perspectives. I feel like we've talked about those enough. I also have deep lived experience in both. Where I really want to talk right now is my professional experience. So predominantly when I worked as a clinician, I worked in emergency medicine, but the other piece of where I trained is in wildlife and conservation medicine. And protecting our natural resources, protecting our environment is something that hasn't really come up a ton in this race this year, and it's critically important. It is the air that we breathe, it is the water that we drink. Jamie mentioned we have some of the most endangered rivers in the entire world in this district. Right? Like we are facing massive climate resiliency problems. We have dramatic issues that will impact this district from climate change, and including things like the housing crisis. We don't just have international climate refugees flocking to the United States. We have domestic climate refugees moving north, right? So we have to take on protecting our environment. We have 25% of this district is protected lands and waters, and we have to make sure that we are protecting them, sustaining them, while also investing in our housing. And then we also have to be looking at our oceans, right? We are a coastal district here. We need to be supporting our fishermen. We need to be supporting our lobstermen, making sure that the industries here that rely on our natural world, our farmers, are supported fully, and that we're protecting our lands at the same time. It's ensuring that we have local food, that we have clean water to drink. These are the basic fundamentals. So when people ask me, okay, you're gonna get to Congress, what committees do you wanna serve on? I say, well, there's two options that I'd love. One, House Natural Resources Committee. Let me protect those lands and waters. The other, Energy and Commerce. Work on fisheries issues and work on the clean energy projects that help us to protect our environment, right? Electrify public transit, keep our commuter rail running, all of the pieces that we need to stop the congestion and the pollution from our traffic. So thank you so much for that great question.
Thank you, Mariah. Jamie?
Beth, I'm a little spicy that you took the air out of the room on me on this one, because it really is what I always talk about as a mother of two in public schools and the former outgoing town moderator in Topsfield. We just held our second STM, and we, again, at the ballot box, voted down 2 out of the 3 overrides. We've had an override in Topsfield every other year, and it goes elementary, Masco, elementary, Essex Tech, elementary, Masco, elementary, and it's out of control. This is again the voodoo trickle-down Reaganomics, right? The guy's administration started defunding the Department of Education and money that went into the state and then into the communities. And now we cannot Proposition 2.5 ourselves out of this. It is forcing seniors to have to sell their homes, and it is pushing our tax dollars higher and higher. I think we're paying almost 3 times the amount that we were when we first moved there 13 years ago. Another part of this that I'm very concerned on is the unfunded mandated special ed that the state is being held responsible to pay for, that the federal government has only spent about 10% on when they're supposed to fully fund it. And now we've moved special education. What did we just do, friends? Who knows the answer to the question? Just moved it under Health and Human Services, right? We're gonna make people sick. We're gonna make you think that you're ill. Not that you're differently abled. Not that we don't have the supports and the teachers and the staff, because we don't wanna spend the money to pay them, and we want to pretend that there's something wrong with you. And this is where we really need to be leaning in, and I want to be on the Education and Workforce Committee on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Tron?
Thank you. As Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local and all of these issues are local. That's what we're facing right now, is that no matter how well we do, and I'm so glad for my colleagues here in the House and Senate, no matter how good we are at the state and local level, we cannot do it alone without federal investment. And that's in all the areas we talked about: housing, healthcare, childcare, utilities, education, climate change even. But the one issue that I think we haven't touched upon is transportation. Transit equity is more than just getting from one place to another. It's about affordability, it's about opportunity and quality of life. It's about making sure that people can rely on public transportation so that they don't have to rely on gas, tolls, parking, and car repairs, and use that money to pay for food, housing, and other necessities. And this is why we need a strong advocate, someone who has the experience of bringing back money to the district to go to Washington to fight back for every dollar to bring back to this community. As a state representative for the last 8 years, I brought back over $500 million to the communities that I represent for the things that they need, roads, bridges, and other necessities. And for us, in terms of transportation, we have to invest not only in fixing our Asian infrastructure, but really expanding out on high-speed rail, making the investments in MBTA, and even in this district, we have Lynn that's been waiting for the Blue Line for the last 30 years. And so all of these things are to allow us to better connect Massachusetts to the rest of the Northeast. And when transportation works, families save money, businesses can attract workers, seniors can remain independent, and people with disabilities can get to where they need to be, but also young people can access jobs and education. And so for me, this also ties in with climate. How do we reduce emissions and meet our climate goals if we can't actually have electrified transportation, et cetera? And so I'm passionate about this issue, as you can see.
Thank you, Tom. John?
So not to be repetitive, but someone whose father worked for a vocational school and 2 high school children, education is job one. And it really does permeate so much when you talk about opportunity, jobs, and a career. And so to me, it's about, having visited and talked to a lot of these superintendents, again, it's, the budgets are insane. And what's happening with special education costs, transportation, healthcare. I joke that I'd rather run for Congress than school committee because these school committees are making some tough decisions and at the local level, and we can't prop 2.5 our way out of this. And so we need, we know the Department of Education has been gutted at the federal level. We need help here, and we need to be focused on things around, to me, it starts at the early level with universal pre-K and making sure we subsidize childcare costs that are killing working families. We have to make sure that we invest in K through 3rd grade education because that's when kids really learn. That's what the reading is important. We talk about, scores and how kids are performing in the state. It starts at the early level. We need to make sure that we're looking at, as I mentioned earlier, vocational training and different pathways for kids, right? We want to make sure that if someone wants to go to a vocational school, learn a trade or learn some, something in the 21st century like AI, they have the tools to do. Not only kids, but young adults. So workers can get to a next level and get to a skill and get to another job. And I've seen that in the community. I was just in Gloucester at the biotech group that's doing some work and has a 10-month program for certification for specific skills. And we need to revamp our curriculum. You look at things like financial literacy. Kids can't learn like the way we did when we were young. And so we need to look at that. We need to make sure tuition-free community colleges is a thing nationwide. As I mentioned earlier, loan forgiveness. So it's about really revamping the education system, giving people tools, but investing in our kids' future. And that's what I would do in Congress, invest in the future.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. We'll now move on to our last question of the evening.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Casey Desmond, and I am the treasurer of the Danvers Dems. And the question is, describe a moment in your life when you took a risk to uphold your values, and are you willing to take such risks moving forward?
Jamie versus you.
Thank you for the question. I'm going to answer this twofold. I've been very transparent about what motherhood was like for me the first time out of the gate. And I'll be remiss to say that it wasn't almost exactly the same the second time. Motherhood is supposed to be flowers, unicorns, rainbows, love, peace, joy. That sleeping baby in the goddamn Pampers box that I never saw ever in my entire life, okay? Instead, I thought I was going to die and almost lost my life to suicidal thoughts. And I've been very transparent about something that's incredibly stigmatized, that women end up in jail, especially if I were black or brown or didn't speak English. I could have potentially been incarcerated or had my children put in the system. But I went to Senator Lovely and talked to her about it in 2013 when a woman got shot dead in the Capitol because she had postpartum psychosis. And I helped write the comprehensive mental health reform bill that the Massachusetts legislature passed. I have created bills that are saving women's and families' lives right now because I didn't ever want another woman or family go through what I did. And I have more friends who have lost their wives to something that is just plain neglect in our country. And when I stood up and spoke as an Arab American about the atrocities in the Middle East that I have seen my entire life, I was told specifically by the Democratic Party I should have shut my mouth and I would never run for office again. And we saw yesterday that the UN declared that indeed, drum roll please, it is a genocide. And I stood up in face of all of that as an elected Arab American woman and a leader to say the truth, because the truth matters more than who I think I am, especially if I'm running to be your representative.
Thank you, Jamie. Mariah?
I just want to second that because that is an incredibly powerful story, and I really appreciate the risk that you took and understanding that you also lived through real consequences for it. I have a slightly different story on this. So I became a veterinarian to save lives, obviously, not to fail them. But quite often in an industry that is meant to provide care, but is payment at time of service, that means that it becomes an immediate financial threshold for people to meet in order to be able to actually access care. In an emergency room and for human medicine, you get treatment right away, and then you get billed later, and it's astronomical, and people go bankrupt for it, but at least their lives got saved. And in veterinary medicine, because of the system that we have, that's not always what happens. And so owning a pet has become a luxury, and it's not by accident. In less than a decade since I graduated, emergency hospitals have gone from about 50% corporate or private equity owned to over 75%. And just talking about that puts at risk my ability to work in this industry, publicly speaking about this in the way that I do on the campaign trail. Where normal inflation has gone up 30%, veterinary inflation has gone up by 60%. And this is entirely corporate greed. This is entirely private equity identifying in the pandemic that it's an essential service and that they can take advantage of all of us. So in the clinic, I have taken risks, providing care and trying to slip it under the radar, hoping management doesn't catch me. I even once convinced the medical director to do a surgery with me as though I was a student teaching me how to do it so that we could do it for a third of the price. That surgery at the time now costs 3 times more. And we're talking tens of thousands of dollars for life-saving surgeries. So it is the job of a doctor to do this, but it shouldn't have to work the way that it does.
Thank you, Mariah. Tron?
All my life, I've taken risks. My family left Vietnam to come here to start a new life. We took a risk. Imagine a 5-year-old girl who came here not speaking a word of English, then ran for state representative and became the first Vietnamese American to ever represent Massachusetts in the House of Representatives, and now standing in front of you to run for Congress. Those are risks. Those are real risks. And even before that, I was the first in my family to go to college. And then after law school, I could have gone corporate, but I decided to go into legal services to help marginalized people because I took that risk because I believe that much in making investments in people, like how people have invested in me to get me to where I am today. And right now, we're running for Congress where the deck is stacked against us with millions of dollars being poured in, and we're running a purely people-powered campaign. So these are real risks. And the reason why I'm not afraid to take them is that I came from a family of fighters. I mentioned to you that my dad fought for democracy and freedom. He risked everything for that. And he taught me to always do the right thing, to always fight to do the right things. And I've continued to do that, even in the legislature more recently, when most of my colleagues voted to gut Mass Save. I was one of 17 to vote to save it. And so I would not be afraid to take hard votes for you when I go to Congress, because you can count on me to make the votes that will make you proud, delivering for the people, lowering costs, and making sure that people understand that their elected officials and government is there to work for them.
Thank you, John. Bethany?
So I came out in college more than 20 years ago as non-binary, at a time before we actually had come up with that word. The words used to describe people like me have changed at least 5 times over the course of my lifetime. And I'm a visibly non-binary person. There was a time when I shaved, I hid myself, I passed because I was trying to get out of waiting tables where I was making $13,000 a year on food stamps and free care, and get that first job. And as soon as I was financially stable, that's when I cut my hair. That's when I started presenting again as more myself. And then I decided to run for Congress at a time when trans people are under attack in this entire country. I've been attacked by libs of TikTok. I've been attacked by the Russian state media. I have the Daily Caller putting out my picture, trying to tie AI regulation to trans people so they can crush AI regulation. And what they say about me is that I show up for people, for my community, and that I want to abolish ICE. Everything they say is a compliment. They hate us because we are right. And it's not that this isn't dangerous for me to have a national profile as the person I am, but they can't intimidate me into shaving. They aren't going to intimidate me into betraying the working class. I'm not afraid of them because to be myself, I had to get over it. I had to stand up. And I will keep doing that, and I will fight for people like me, and I will make it clear that the next people should not have to be this brave. We can embrace our whole diversity here in America.
Thank you, Bethany. John?
So I've taken a lot of risks in my business and my career, but I'd have to say the biggest risk I've taken is jumping into this race. So I'm an outsider. I don't have political insiders, donors, the machine backing me. But what I do have is a belief in public service and making a change. And so I'm not perfect, but I've been very fortunate in my life. I consider myself very lucky. I'm proud of the career that I built in financial services space, doing work in legal compliance, working with government. Been fortunate to sit on working groups at the Treasury Department, Mass Secretary of State. Been fortunate to start my own business from the ground up and create it to over 60 people and see a lot of people progress in their own careers and lives. And I'm fortunate to have a wonderful family and 2 kids, and I had a very secure path in front of me, but I just couldn't sit on the sidelines because of my values, because of the way I was brought up. My father was a local selectman in Milford, Massachusetts. He taught me the value of putting people first and what you can do when you impact the community and making sure that we address this level of inequality that's happening. And the more I'm into this, the more I'm just like, want to have this opportunity to help people because I'm seeing so many people suffering. And I want people to have the opportunities that I had. Again, the American dream has to be achievable. We need to give people hope and opportunity. We need to bring people together and get back to our common sense of decency and community, and we just don't have that right now. So I think to me, this is about public service. This is about taking risks day in and day out, but risks and standing up for what you believe in. You hear everybody saying, I'm going to fight for this and fight for that, and that's important. It's important that you have values, that you have a framework. My father said, judge someone not by their words, but their actions. And so look at what people are doing as well as what they're saying, and look at how that can positively impact the community.
Thank you, John. Dan?
You know, the 107-day mark in the White House, they asked me to go over to be advisor to Vice President Harris. I got to see up close what kind of president she would have been. She would have been an incredible president, driven, morally steadfast, and would have ushered in an incredible democratic agenda for our country. And so when she lost, I was devastated. And I wondered whether I should check out, sit on the sidelines, give up with the Trump administration. But I realized that it was time to double down on the fight for our democracy. And I felt that if I had the knowledge and understanding of how government worked, how good government should work, that I needed to call out this administration at every single turn and take action. I used to work at the Huffington Post for Arianna Huffington, a left-leaning organization that many of you may know. And so I started my own organization to call out this administration every single day. And not just do that, but to give people the ammunition they needed to talk to their neighbors about why it's so serious to cut billions of dollars to the National Institutes of Health if you care about people with cancer. Why it's so important that we not cut 80,000 jobs at the VA for our veterans when wait times are going up. Why, first of all, what the Department of Education actually is, and why it's so important that we don't see the kind of gutting that this president has taken. I've been very fortunate to have built that into a successful organization on top of calling out the president's lies on CNN, debating Scott Jennings. Many of you see me doing that. It's my favorite thing to do, as well as directly on Fox News in front of the president. So if you want someone in DC who not only will take action to enact bold legislation, but not give this president an inch at every single turn, then respectfully, I am your candidate.
Thank you, Dan. So we'll now move on to the final portion of the forum. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to give a closing statement, beginning with Trump.
Thank you so much. Voters have a clear choice in this race, and it's not about who can yell at Donald Trump the loudest. We need to do better than that. I've talked to you all. We all agree we hate Trump. We need a new leader for new times. And DC insiders and the leaders of yesteryear got us into this mess. They're not going to get us out. We can try to send the same type of leaders back to DC, or we can send someone with a fresh voice, new perspective. I know what it's like to grow up poor in a working class family. I know the fear of growing up in an immigrant family, especially now. And I've seen firsthand what happens when you actually make the investments in people and deliver for them how they can thrive. And so, as the only legislator in this race, I know how to legislate. I know how to get things done. I have a track record of getting things done and delivering for the people of my district, and I will continue to do that. I've been here. I've done the work, and I will continue to be here to listen to people, to meet people where they're at. And with that lived experience, I'm not just theorizing about how policies impact people on the ground. I've lived it. And as a legal aid attorney, I've represented people who've been impacted by policies. And as a state legislator, I know what difference we can make when we implement good policies. And so we need a congressman who is not only talking about representation, but making sure that we're really bringing people in so that the people most impacted can have a seat at the table. We're just not talking about hope, but giving people tangible reasons to be hopeful by delivering for them. And that is my promise to you. And if that is what you agree with, I hope you consider supporting my campaign and my candidacy and build out that vision of a better America, of a more welcoming and inclusive Commonwealth and country for all.
Thank you, John. John?
So as I said earlier, our system is broken, and we got to move beyond the status quo. We need leaders who believe in public service and can get things done, and to focus on working families, the issues we talked about tonight, education, healthcare, the economy. I'm the outsider here. I'm not backed by political insiders. I'm focused on everyday members of our community. You know, the mother of four in Lynn, the business owner in Salem, these are as important as political endorsers or anyone else in this community. So the question is, why should you consider voting for me? One, I understand how government works. I spent my career working on financial services legislation and regulation. I've worked on corruption, I worked on regulation, combating fraud and protecting consumers. I understand how the sausage is made in DC. Second, I'm someone who's able to get things done. I've proved it in the private sector. I ran a successful business. I've taken the risk to build a job, build a company from the ground up, create jobs. And I believe in hard work. And the way I've been successful is building relationships. So I want to take a common sense and a get stuff done approach to DC. Third, I'm a member of this community. I've been here for over 20 years, raised my family here, been part of, coach local sports, understand we have the most beautiful community on the North Shore. And I've been out this campaign listening, visiting schools and nonprofits and businesses, and understanding their needs. Fourth, my campaign is not theoretical. It's about actual solutions and ideas. And so we're putting together roundtables of groups like for climate, for education, for small business, and coming up with real ideas, real solutions that we can bring to DC and try to work together to get it done. We're seeing some movement there. Hopefully we can keep that momentum going. And finally, I believe in public service. It's about putting people over politics. It's about respecting others, getting back to our sense of community. There's too much polarization in politics right now. So my goal is to help create opportunities for people. It's about opportunity. It's about hope. And for me, if you're like me and tired of the political games and want someone who can get things done, I ask for your support. And thank you again for the time tonight.
Thank you, John. Jamie?
So I'm also Madam Moderator and Representative Belcedo, and I'm bringing those skills to this particular position. And I think that's a big, big plus here. Also, I'm going to list off the federal bills that I've not only helped write, but have gotten passed, bipartisan, over the past 10 years. Bringing Postpartum Depression Out of the Shadows Act, 2015. Military Moms Mental Health Assessment Act, 2020. National Maternal Mental Health Hotline Federal Authorization, 2020. Into the Light Maternal Mental Health and Substance Use Disorder Act, 2022. Maintaining Our Obligations to Moms Who Serve Act, 2024. The Wells Act, 2026. Moms Matter Act, 2026. And the Traumatic Births Research Act, 2026. And I ain't done. My parents met in a hunt. I was born in Wakefield. I was raised in Reading. I went to Salem State. I got married in Newburyport. I bought my first house in Beverly. I do all my shopping at Market Basket in Danvers. I represented Hamilton, Ipswich, Manchester, Raleigh, Topsfield, and Wenham in the Massachusetts State House. And I'm raising my family in Topsfield. I'm a product of this district. I'm the only one on this stage that knows this place inside and out. From Billerica to Burlington. From Manchester, I'm not going to say Melrose. I don't know what the other M is. But here's what I'm going to tell you. I got the chops. I got a backbone. I got a great accent. And if you don't think people listen when I talk, then you don't know who I am, okay? I don't just know the legislators down there. Better yet, they know me because I'm a respected leader, a leader in the healthcare space. I helped the Vice President write the blueprint on maternal mental health and maternal health. The President put all of my initiatives in his budget this year. That's the type of leadership and what I will do for this district. And I thank you very much for having me here tonight.
Thank you, Jamie. Mariah?
Oh, you have heard from a lot of wonderful Democrats tonight. Sincerely, you're spoiled for choice. It's not a bad thing. But the question in this primary is not just a matter of who is going to agree with you, but it's a matter of who has actually lived and is living what you are living, and not just read about it in a briefing memo, right? So I worked clinically as an essential worker all through the pandemic. I went down to DC in 2021 to do my homework. I'm an academic, I'm a scientist. I don't take the leap into something without knowing how it works, right? So I worked there, I worked in the State Department for 2 years, I worked on the Hill for a couple of years. I wrote legislation that got introduced with bipartisan support. This is experience that I have, but I also, all that while, kept working nights and weekends as a veterinarian. Because when you start working in government, you start dealing with billions and millions of dollars, you lose touch with what a dollar means. And by continuing to work in the clinic, I remained in touch with really how close to the edge every single one of us is living. I'm the only renter in this race. I believe I'm the only one that Donald Trump's policies have made it so that I'm going to end up paying over $150,000 more over the cost of my student loans. These are not talking points for me, the fact that I sit at the kitchen table and know that I will probably never be able to retire. This is lived reality. And Congress has plenty of MBAs and lawyers, people who have not had to worry about how they're going to pay their bills or struggle about getting to the grocery line and realizing that there may not be enough in your account to actually pay for everything in your cart. But what Congress is missing is us, people who do their work, pay their bills, go home, and still open their electric bill with fear. So I am running to bring our voices to Washington. And I'm doing that understanding how this works. So I ask for your support and would be so grateful if you would consider voting for me on September 1st.
Thank you, Mariah. Dan?
So it's 8:36. My kids, 5 and 3, are supposed to go to bed at 7:30. They never go to bed at 7:30. I try to be quiet. This campaign, unfortunately, has some late nights, which I mean, unfortunately, as a parent. And I try to be quiet about it, and somehow they always hear me and want me to come up and pat them to sleep. And I think about, when I do that, what kind of environment we're in. A president who's taking away the rights of all of us. And I think about what kind of world we're leaving our next generation. We talked a little bit about climate, not enough tonight, about the agenda that we had passed that was repealed by this president because the oil companies raised him $1 billion. What we're doing overseas, pulling out of our alliances that will make my kids and generations to come so much more unsafe, both from a national security perspective and from an economic perspective. It's the Dobbs anniversary today, where my daughter will have less rights than my mother. And so I think it's time for a candidate that understands the gravity of this situation. We'll never let this president off the hook and fight him at every single turn. And someone with the experience at all levels of government to deliver on day one, to defend our democracy, hold this president accountable, and make sure that we're actually delivering on a bold affordability agenda that will put an average of $23,000 in the pockets of an individual person in this district. I respectfully ask for your vote, and I will fight every single day to make that happen. Let's go.
Thank you, Dan. Bethany?
Thank you. I was working at One Medical, writing software for doctors and patients, working with the executives, the lawyers, the MBAs, helping them understand the technology we were using and why they kept not getting what they were asking. They thought they were asking for because they didn't understand the details on the ground. And I could play that translator role. And then we got acquired by Amazon. And Amazon's executives were not interested in listening. Instead, I got together with my coworkers. I was the only one who had ever been a member of a union, but we started organizing. We came together. We learned how to be brave for the first time. And then they reorganized our company so that we were no longer a cohesive unit. And it turns out that the penalties for workplace labor violations are basically non-existent. And so everyone just sort of quit and we went our separate ways. But we tried. And I know that there is a path where we can organize when we are confronted by things like this. Congress has business people, it has lawyers, and it has professional politicians. I will be the only one who reads and writes code. I will be able to go see what DOGE did with our data. I can find out where software is being used and abused, and it was under Biden that they created the facial recognition app to tell ICE whether someone is a citizen or not with some probability of success. I know that this is not entertainment. Politics isn't theoretical. This is our lives. This isn't a grift for me. This isn't a career. I'm doing this because we need to address the challenges our country is facing. We have to address AI or things are going to fall apart. And so I won't just talk. I'm not going to fight in a theoretical sense. I'm going to organize. And if you send me to Washington, I'll do just that. So check out bethfordemocracy.com.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you, everybody. This is your second opportunity to apply.
Great job, Lou. Great job.
On behalf of the Danvers Democratic Town Committee,